China's out-of-control Tiangong-1 space station smashed into Earth at 17,000 miles per hour off the coast of Tahiti on Monday morning and mostly disintegrated as it hit the planet's atmosphere. The demise of the 9-ton space station had been the subject of scientific speculation for months amid fears large chunks of it could come down near population centers. Experts had been unable to predict where the installation, which is roughly the size of a school bus, would come down, but in the end it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere over the South Pacific. The craft re-entered the atmosphere around 8:15 a.m. Beijing time, 0015 GMT, and the vast majority of it had burnt up upon re-entry, the China Manned Space Engineering Office said. Just minutes before, their best estimate predicted that it was expected to re-enter off the Brazilian coast in the South Atlantic near the cities of São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. China's space authority said on Sunday that the station would hit speeds of nearly 17,000 miles per hour before disintegrating. They previously said its fiery disintegration would offer a splendid show akin to a meteor shower, but the remote location likely deprived stargazers of a spectacle of fireballs falling from the sky. Scientists monitoring the craft's disintegrating orbit had forecast the craft would mostly burn up and would pose only the slightest of risks to people. Analysis from the Beijing Aerospace Control Center showed it had mostly burned up. Authorities said any debris from the space station would be carrying hydrazine, a high-toxic rocket fuel, and warned people to refrain from touching it or inhaling its fumes. Scroll down for video. The Aerospace Corporation had earlier predicted Tiangong-1's re-entry would take place within 2 hours either side of 1:30 a.m. BST on Monday, 8:30 p.m. on Sunday in New York and 10:30 a.m. on Monday in Sydney. Based on the space station's orbit, it could have come back to Earth somewhere 43 degrees north and 43 degrees south, a range covering most of the United States, China, Africa, Southern Europe, Australia, and South America. The United States Air Force 18th Space Control Squadron, which tracks and detects all artificial objects in Earth's orbit, said they had also tracked the Tiangong-1 as it re-entered the atmosphere over the South Pacific. It said in a statement they had confirmed re-entry in coordination with counterparts in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, and Britain. Jonathan McDowell, an astronomer at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, said the module zoomed over Pyongyang and the Japanese city of Kyoto during daylight hours, reducing the odds of seeing it before it hit the Pacific. It would have been fun for people to see it, but there will be other re-entries, McDowell told AFP. The good thing is that it doesn't cause any damage when it comes down, and that's what we like. Authorities had warned that the chances of any one person being hit by debris was considered less than 1 in a trillion by the Aerospace Corporation. Meteorologist Brian Bennett said, when it reaches 65 miles above the Earth it will no longer be able to orbit and will begin its rapid re-entry. Atmospheric breakup will begin when it reaches 50 miles above the Earth and undergo a fiery re-entry until about 30 miles. Only about 10% of the bus-sized, 8.5-ton spacecraft will likely survive being burned up on re-entry, mainly its heavier components such as its engines. The station was due to appear as early as midday on Saturday but has slowed down due to changes in the weather conditions in space, according to the European Space Agency. The agency said calmer space weather was now expected as a high-speed stream of solar particles did not cause an increase in the density of the upper atmosphere, as previously expected. Such an increase in density would have pulled the spacecraft down sooner, it said. The re-entry window was highly variable, the ESA had earlier cautioned. There was similar uncertainty about where debris from the lab could land as well. The high speeds of returning satellites mean they can travel thousands of kilometers during that time window, and that makes it very hard to predict a precise location of re-entry, said Holger Krog, head of the ESA's Space Debris Office, in comments posted on the agency's website. The ESA added, however, that the space lab will likely break up over water, which covers most of the planet's surface, and it described the probability of someone being hit by a piece of debris from Tiangong-1 as 10 million times smaller than the yearly chance of being hit by lightning. There is no need for people to worry, the China Manned Space Engineering Office said earlier on its WeChat social media account. Tiangong-1, or Heavenly Palace, was placed in orbit in September 2011 and had been slated for a controlled re-entry, but it ceased functioning in March 2016 and space enthusiasts have been bracing for its fiery return since. The station played host to 2 crewed missions and served as a test platform for perfecting docking procedures and other operations. Its last crew departed in 2013 and contact with it was cut in 2016. During its brief lifespan, It hosted Chinese astronauts on several occasions as they performed experiments and even taught a class that was broadcast into schools across the country. The ESA said the lab will make an uncontrolled re-entry as ground teams are no longer able to fire its engines or thrusters for orbital adjustments. China's chief space laboratory designer, Zhu Zhongpeng, has denied Tiangong was out of control, but did not provide specifics on what, if anything, China was doing to guide the craft's return to Earth. Beijing sees its multi-billion-dollar space program as a symbol of the country's rise. It plans to send a manned mission to the moon in the future. China sent another lab, Tiangong-2, into orbit in September 2016 as stepping stone to its goal of having a crewed space station by 2022. Beijing began its manned spaceflight program in 1990 after buying Russian technology that enabled it to become the third country with the ability to launch humans into space, following the former Soviet Union and the United States. During the re-entry, atmospheric drag will rip away solar arrays, antennas and other external components at an altitude of around 60 miles. According to the Chinese Space Office, the intensifying heat and friction will cause the main structure to burn or blow up, and it should disintegrate at an altitude of around 50 miles, it said. Most fragments will dissipate in the air and a small amount of debris will fall relatively slowly before landing across hundreds of square miles, most likely in the ocean, which covers more than 70% of the Earth's surface. The Tiangong-1 space station weighs 8.5 tons and is 34.1 feet, 10.4 meters, long. The Space Lab was originally planned to be decommissioned in 2013, but its mission was repeatedly extended. The odds of a piece of space debris hitting any individual person are estimated at less than 1 in 1 trillion, 1 in a trillion. However, experts advise that it is best to not touch any space debris or breathe in any vapors it may release if anyone does come into contact with it. Scientists have downplayed any concerns about the Tiangong-1 causing any damage when it hurtles back to Earth. The European Space Agency noted that nearly 6,000 uncontrolled re-entries of large objects have occurred over the past 60 years without harming anyone. By far the largest object descending from the heavens to splash down at Point Nemo in the southern Pacific Ocean, in 2001, was Russia's Mir Space Lab, which weighed 120 tons. Jonathan McDowell, an astronomer at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, estimates that Tiangong-1 is the 50th most massive uncontrolled re-entry of an object since 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite. At an altitude of 37 to 43 miles, debris will begin to turn into a series of fireballs, which is when people on the ground will see a spectacular show, he said. Experts will not know the precise location and speed of the space station, but it is thought to be traveling at around 17,000 miles per hour. China hoisted Tiangong-1, its first manned space lab, into space in 2011. It was slated for a controlled re-entry, but ground engineers lost control in March 2016 of the 8-ton craft in March 2016, which is when it began its descent toward a fiery end. Source: Aerospace Corporation.
Where the freaks at?